Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So excited to welcome you today to SCS, and we're really happy to host this webinar. There are so many webinars out there, and there's no shortage of information coming at you. Our goal for this webinar, which is titled SMETA Social Audits, Overcoming Common Challenges and Learning Best Practices. And the goals are to take you into and beyond the audit process, to include common challenges along with the how-to of developing a best practice corrective action plan. We'll be giving you an overview of the SMETA audit process, and maybe you're someone brand new to SMETA, as well as really diving deep into the weeds, much deeper than other webinars you'll see, and really getting into issues and what you do to correct them, and really giving you some tools to take from this to leverage at your own facility, farm, packing house, company. And we hope that you learn something and get a better sense of the complexities of social audits, as well as what you can do from here. All in all, SCS is here to help and support you along the way. Again, if you have questions, please put them into the question section on the right side. You can also chat with them, and we hope to get to as many of them as we can. So with that, let's get started. So hi, everyone. My name is Oren Jaffe. I've been with SCS a little over 2 years. I have well over 15 years of responsible sourcing and sustainable supply chain and CSR, helping companies build transparent and ethical supply chains. Sandy, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Sandy Ledesma. I am the program manager for sustainability programs here at SCS. I've been at SCS for almost 4 years now, and I ensure our clients are prepared and have a smooth audit process here at SCS. I support the program within the operations as well as the client relationship management.
Cynthia.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Cynthia Velez. I'm a technical manager working in a SMETA program. I've been managing a SMETA program for many years now. And in this webinar, I will share with you some common issues raised during the audit and a little guidance to create an effective action plan.
Thank you. So quickly, an agenda. We're going to try to go about 30, 35 minutes. We want to keep your attention, make it exciting. But I'll give you a quick background of SCS, and then Sandy's going to jump into the social SMETA social audit overview and the process, and just lay it all out so that you understand. And then Cynthia will get into common challenges and developing an effective CAP-R plan. And then I'll jump back in with why SMETA and why SCS, and we can jump into questions. So SCS, we've been around about 40 years, and we're an international leader in third-party environmental and sustainability certifications, as well as standards development. And we work in auditing, testing, certification, verification, training, consulting, and our goal is really to advance sustainability to ensure a healthy planet and a thriving economy that works for everyone. As you can see, we have 24,000 plus clients, 38 plus years of experience. We audit in all major markets. And one thing that's unique is that SCS is a California benefit corporation. We're actually designated, not a B Corp, but an actual designated B Corp benefit corporation out of California. So we help businesses, governments, NGOs meet regulations, stand out in markets, demonstrate environmental and social responsibility. And our clients come from the natural resources, built environment, consumer product, food and ag, retail, green buildings, responsible supply chain, products, jewelry, climate strategy, responsible forestry. We are in a lot of different areas. So this kind of gives you a nice overview of the different areas. We do over 90 certifications. We develop standards. And so really SCS is divided into three main divisions. The first one would be the environmental certification group, where we do indoor air quality and life cycle and green buildings. And we help companies develop their carbon footprint baseline, scope 1, 2, and 3, and carbon neutral certifications and greenhouse gas reduction strategies. We include energy and water and metals and biofuels. A lot of work in the environmental certification. Our oldest group is the natural resources group. And you might have seen our work if you look on the back of a notebook or on a ream of paper, you see down here FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council. So SCS was actually one of the founders of FSC back in 1989, helping develop that standard. So we do a lot of work in chain of custody, and our auditors are in the forest, making sure and verifying that the wood and the forest are being sustainably harvested. So we do a lot with carbon offset and greenhouse gas verification project services. We work with marine stewardship and aquaculture, and you might have seen Marine Stewardship Council or logos on your seafood, and that's our work as well. And then we come into the food and agriculture group, and again, auditing, certification, verification. We do food safety. You might have seen organic, Rainforest Alliance, non-GMO, gluten-free, fair trade. All of that is our work, as well as SMETA, which we're here to talk about today. So we are a global company. We are all around the world. And here's just some of the programs that we manage. We have our own sustainably grown certification, fair trade. We run the cafe practices program for Starbucks. We have a certified carbon neutral certification, non-GMO, EFI, then SMETA. So without further ado, let me pass this on to Sandy. And thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Okay, so I wanted to first start by answering that question of what is SMETA? What is that? What is a SMETA audit? And SMETA is a social compliance audit methodology based on the ETI, abbreviated for Ethical Trading Initiative-based Code of Conduct, as well as the inclusion of the local country labor laws of the site that is to be audited. Now, SMETA is a very interesting social compliance audit because it actually encompasses all types of industry sectors of responsible business practices. And it includes working conditions, health and safety, legal, business ethics, as well as a detailed environmental assessment if you were to choose a 4-pillar audit, which I'll talk a little bit later about the difference between those two types of audits. Now, what's very interesting, I would say, about SMETA too, is that it is widely recognized by major brands, as you can see on this slide, by Walmart, Costco, Amazon, and Target. And what makes it very convenient too is that these reports are actually being shared, or they can be shared with stakeholders as well as any other clients that are linked on this online platform that the SMETA program uses called SEDEX Advance. This online platform is used to upload the audit report, as well as upload the nonconformities that are being raised in the audit, and where our technical team uploads the corrective actions and has that proof that all of the nonconformities have been closed in the system. Next slide, Oren. Okay. So I wanted to talk also of how to get started with planning the audit specifically with SCS. So the first step we would direct you is to go to SCS SMETA webpage, which you'll see the link there, to contact our team in order to obtain a SMETA audit application. And at the same time, we will also recommend the client to register their site on the SEDEX website. That then gives them that access to that online platform that I just talked to previously, which we will need in order to download the report template. Once we receive your completed application, SCS will then send a quote with the total estimated audit cost. And we will then have the client sign the work order and professional services agreement, as well as emit a retainer invoice payment, which is 50% of those estimated audit fees that were included in that quote. Once we receive payment, we can go ahead and start identifying audit dates, confirming that with you as the client, as well as with the auditor. And then we will also be providing these pre-audit guidance documentation, including steps on how to complete the supplier audit questionnaire, which I'll talk a little bit more about how important it is in the process of preparing for the SMETA audit. Next slide there. Okay. So I want to talk also about the SMETA audit structure. There are two types of audits that are offered. It's a 2-pillar audit as well as a 4-pillar audit. In terms of our experience with clients that we have worked with, majority are choosing a 2-pillar audit because that is what is being required of their major retailer or brand. However, a 4-pillar audit is a very attractive choice because, as you can see, the 4-pillar audit is a much more complete report that has that complete environmental assessment section as well as the business ethics section. And it also eliminates the need to do a second audit if you were to start a new retailer relationship. That does require a 4-pillar audit. The scope of the audit is also defined by the number of entities, sites, as well as if there's worker housing involved in the site, and most importantly, the size of the workforce. The audit duration very much depends on how many workers are in the site, as well as the use of subcontractors as well. Now I wanted to really give you an overview of the guidance documents that are provided by SEDEX and how they can help you prepare for the audit. So the SMETA best practice guidance is a best practice guidance on conducting ethical trade audits. With this document, SEDEX has developed a threshold for compliance that all auditors, as well as affiliate audit companies, must follow. So this document is important because it shows what is being required of the client, as well as what is being required of us as the audit company, what we need to follow in terms of how to plan the audit, how to scope the audit, what's the duration of the audit, what's the reporting timelines. All those type of elements are included in that best practice guidance. The second document you can see here is the measurement criteria. One of the most common questions that we receive from new SMETA clients is there a checklist that we can look at, or is there a document that you can show us exactly what is being evaluated? And our answer is unfortunately not quite. However, the measurement criteria goes really into depth into each section of the audit report with not only the elements that the auditor will be evaluating, but the type of documents that they'll be looking for, the type of worker interview questions that will be asked to the workers in order to evaluate compliance to that indicator. So it is quite a lengthy document. I do want to warn you all on that, but it is worth taking the time to review this document. And the third one is a SEDEX supplier workbook. This is more of a worksheet style document. It's also provided in the SEDEX website. And it gives you that opportunity to evaluate what you have right now. What are your best practices? What might be those gaps that you may need to address before the audit? Next slide there, Oren. Sorry about that. Okay. So the ethical trade initiative-based code of conduct, as I said previously, that is what this SMETA audit is structured on. And as you can see, there are 9 main elements. And for example, under the living wages element, Auditors will be looking at minimum wage requirements are being met by reviewing worker records, as well as conducting worker interviews. Another example is if regular work is provided, auditors will look into employee contracting processes and understand the terms of employment. These are the elements that are very clearly stated in the audit report. That is how it is being structured. And I also want to know that there are additional elements in the report. For example, the 0 section, which you will see in the audit report, which is universal rights, covering the United Nations guiding principles for business and human rights, as well as the 10th section, which is entitlement to work and immigration, and the environmental section and business ethics section we already flagged earlier as well. But as you can see, I've also provided a link where you can access this document. Next slide there. And I also wanted to take a moment to, I know we've already talked about the guidance documents and the different preparation documents that we provide, but I wanted to provide more of a checklist of what needs to be reviewed, what needs to be completed in order to ensure a smooth and an efficient audit process. So I've already said before that we do send a pre-audit information pack provided by SES. It includes documents directly from SEDEX, as well as a document that we prepared, which is a list of all the documents that will be reviewed in the audit, the type of document. So that will give you an idea of what kind of documents need to be ready to be reviewed on site. Now, also completing the self-assessment questionnaire is very crucial also to the preparation of the audit. The completion of this step is actually required as part of the audit process. If the auditors go on site and the self-assessment questionnaire is not completed, they actually can put a finding on that. So we don't want you to do that. We want you to complete the self-assessment questionnaire before, but we also want to make sure that you're taking the time to complete it in a manner that is giving you that opportunity to really evaluate what you have on your site. We've had clients that complete the self-assessment questionnaire maybe the night before or 2 days before because they know they need to get it completed, but they're not necessarily really reading into those questions and that information that's being provided. And we definitely recommend completing the self-assessment questionnaire as a way of conducting an internal audit of your operation in preparation for the audit. Now, initiating the audit on the SEDEX system is also very crucial. Don't worry, we'll send you instructions on how to complete that step in the system and having the documentation ready to be reviewed by the auditors as well. You know, there could be, it's definitely more efficient to maybe already have a binder of documents or have everything already laid out for the auditor so there's no lost time in that aspect. And most importantly as well is ensuring that appropriate management is present. Union representatives are present, anyone else that should be there, or at least be available. One thing to note is that if something is not there or not available, we mark it on the audit report. So we want to make sure that we are delivering the most complete audit report, and that's how we can do that. And this is a graph that shows the on-site audit activities that take place. So we'll start by audit planning. As I said before, once we receive the payment of the retainer invoice, we'll start identifying dates with the auditor as well as with the client. The on-site audit process starts with an opening meeting where key personnel will discuss the expectations of the SMETA audit, and the auditors will be there with management and anyone else who should be there in that opening meeting. Then during that on-site audit process, auditors will conduct document review, which can include payroll, employee files, trainings, written policies, etc., as well as touring the fields and facilities and offices and interviewing management and workers, all while comparing the site practices against these ETI code requirements and local laws and regulations. The audit process will then end in a closing meeting where the auditors will discuss findings with the key personnel and where the CAP-R is agreed upon as well. The CAP-R is abbreviated as a corrective action process report, which is where the findings will be included in this report, and at the same time, an opportunity for the auditor to discuss with the site what type of action can be taken to respond to these nonconformities. Then the report and the CAPR will be uploaded on this online SEDEX system about 10 business days after the closing meeting. And then that's when the corrective action process will start. Once all NCs are closed, then the audit is considered complete. Now I want to introduce Cynthia to talk about, I believe, is the most important section of this presentation. There is a lot of guidance documents. You can look at the SEDEX online system to get guidance on how to prepare for the audit. But what Cynthia will be providing right now is an example from an existing client of an effective corrective action plan. And I think that's going to help all who want to understand more of this post-audit element.
Thank you, Sandy. Well, as Sandy mentioned, in this part of the webinar, I share with you a guidance to create an effective corrective action plan and show you an example of a corrective action plan implemented. Before to start with a corrective action plan for non-compliances, it is important to be clear about the difference between a non-compliance and an observation. According to SMETA standards, a non-compliance is an instance where the practices of the site of employment don't meet the requirements or either the law or either the ETI-based code. Take into consideration that a non-compliance can be raised where there is no system in place or there is a system but is not effective in ensuring compliance, or where the workers' conditions are not adequate. On the other hand, an observation is an instance where the practices of the workplace don't break the law or the ETI-based code, but if not corrected, could lead to a non-compliance. Please keep in mind that an observation can be raised even if there is a system in place, but there is only one isolated situation which can be corrected immediately during the audit. For example, a fire extinguisher that was not properly mounted in the wall, or maybe a worker was found not wearing the required PPE. Okay, sorry. Now, I'll be talking about the verification method of non-compliances. We could distinguish the findings raised during an audit by the verification method. SMETA establishes two methods of verifying or reviewing the corrective actions implemented by a site to determine compliance and proceed to closing. You can find these in the CAPR document provided by the auditor during the closing meeting in the column sections at the end of the document, and also directly in SEDEX platform once the audit report has been uploaded. The first verification method is a desktop review. This is just an offsite assessment of documented and provided evidence in SEDEX platform, which demonstrate that a non-compliance has been correct and systems put in place to prevent its reoccurrence. Please take into consideration that this should be a strong, enough, and very detailed evidence in order to avoid that this evidence could be rejected, which further delays the process. It is also important to keep in mind that providing adequate and well-supported evidence at the first time will speed up the verification process, and you will be able to complete your process in a shorter time. Now, for the case of the desktop review, the evidence provided that you should send may include, but it is not limited to, number one, a clear description of actions taken to address the non-compliance. Number two, a copy of any documents which show the ongoing effectiveness of the corrective actions has been assessed. And number 3, and one of the most important, a photo of photos of the newly corrected issue. The second type of verification method is a follow-up audit. This is a revisit of the site and will be required when the adequacy of the corrected actions cannot be clearly demonstrated by documentary evidence alone. SMETA establishes two types of follow-up audit: a partial follow-up audit and a full follow-up audit. The partial follow-up audit is focused on previous issues raised during the initial or periodic audit, and a follow-up audit, and a full follow-up audit includes the review of the previous issues raised during the initial or periodic audit, plus a full scope or a full review, like in an initial audit. Now, to be clear on when a follow-up audit is required or could take place, SMETA establishes 3 conditionals. The first conditional is that a sampling of wage or hours records is required. This is for findings like over 60 working hours per week, or maybe not rest provided to workers in 1 week. The second conditional for a follow-up audit is that worker testimony is essential. This means it is necessary to conduct worker interviews to verify compliance. And the third conditional is confidential information. Sometimes there is some sensitive information that should be carefully managed. Well, now I'd like to address some examples of the most common non-compliances raised or observed during an audit. For findings that requires a follow-up audit as verification method, the most common issues observed are: number 1, total hours exceed 60 hours per week. Even though this is allowed by the local regulations, it is necessary to be in full compliance with this SMETA requirement, even during the peak season. We need to keep in mind that a site is being audited against the law and the ETI-based code. And when these two are opposed, we need to follow the stricter criteria, that in this case is the ETI-based code. Example number 2 is workers not receiving 1 rest day in every 7 days. Same case that the one before, it is necessary to be in full compliance with the SMETA requirement, even though it's allowed by the local regulation. And example number 3 is no worker committee on site. It is an important SMETA requirement to have a link to serve as communication channel between workers and management. This committee should be integrated by operative workers. This is no supervisors, no managers, no administrative staff. It's more focused in production workers. For findings with a desktop verification method, the most common issues raised during an audit are: number 1, no communication of workers on ethical code. This is one of the most common issues raised during an audit, and the only thing you need to do is provide a training to workers on the ethical code. And also communication includes post the ethical code in the premises. If your site is currently working with another ethical code different to the ETI-based code, that could be acceptable as long as this ethical code includes the basic 9 elements included in the ETI-based code. And example number 2 is an emergency evacuation drill not conducted but not cover all workers in all shifts. This means that it's necessary to conduct at least 1 emergency evacuation drill per year, making sure you're including all workers. If your site has 2 or 3 shifts, a drill for every shift should be conducted. Also, you need to keep the records of every drill conducted as evidence, including drill log, photos, videos, attendance list, signed by workers, among others. Example number 3 is no occupational risk assessment in place. Well, it's really common that any kind of assessment is missing in a site. Assessments such as illumination assessment, noise assessment, temperature assessment, among others. You need to make sure to conduct all the necessary and required risk assessment in a properly manner. This is well documented with the adequate methodology, including control measures, etc. And example number 4, firefighting equipment not inspected. Remember that all firefighting equipment should be inspected once a month to verify that the equipment is in good conditions and is properly working at all times. Thank you. Now, I provide you guidance for creating an effective corrective action plan. For this, we have identified 4 steps to follow. The first step is identify the root cause. Let's start by understanding what the root cause is. The root cause refers to the specific procedure or lack of procedure which caused the issue to arise. In other words, is the origin of the problem. Once we have identified the root cause of our issue, we can proceed with the next step, that is, review local regulations and ETI SMETA standards. This consists in review the specific and complete requirement established by local regulations and ETI-based code. Even though the auditor has provided you during the closing meeting a recommended action for the issue, this is only a guidance. You need to review the whole requirement in the law and in the SMETA documentation to make sure you are covering the issue in an integral way to show compliance and avoid reoccurrence. This is also to ensure that you are not only implementing a temporary correction. After that, the next step is implement the corrective action. Once you're aware about the requirement is, now you can conduct the necessary changes that include the implementation of the procedure, the correction of the gap, and one of the most important, provide the appropriate training or communication to the workers on the new policy or on the new measure. And the last step is send evidence to review. This is just upload in SEDEX enough and strong evidence showing compliance and ensuring non-reoccurrence. You can upload as many files as needed. If you're facing troubles to upload evidence, please reach out to me via email directly and you can send the evidence. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. Well, I'd like to take a moment to show you an example of an effective corrective action implemented in a site. This is in order you can have a guidance on how to do it. Well, in this case, the finding was during the facility tour, it was noted that the factory has not installed detection system or smoke detectors as part of fire alarm system. For this case, the site sent the following evidence. Number 1, emergency plan. In this case, the site updated its emergency plan, including the new measures, since one of the root causes identified was the gap in the emergency plan. As second evidence, they sent the purchase invoice of the equipment and the technical information sheet of the installed equipment. We can see here an example of a technical information sheet. This is really important since this way we can verify that the equipment purchase is adequate according to the characteristics of the site. For example, the size, among others. And other evidence that the site sent is a training log They provided to workers with a training on the new policy, on the new measures. After that, they provided a training to workers, and the training long that they sent includes the content of the training, the goal of the training, the date at the time, and an attendance record list signed by workers. And finally, they sent several photos of the installed equipment in different areas, packing area, canteen area, etc. Well, as you can see, in this case, the site provided enough evidence to show full compliance with the requirement. This way, we can proceed to closing. Okay, now we'll go back with Oren to talk about SMETA benefits. If you have any question, please send it in the chat.
Thank you, Cynthia. Excellent. So, real quick, so what are the benefits of SMETA? You know, really, along with making sure that you adhere to your customers' requirements, which is very important, you actually get greater transparency into your own company's practices and working conditions, allowing you to make better business decisions. And there might be violations you didn't even realize that were there. The other thing is really helping your workers, improving environmental practices. Happy workers equal more productive workers. Understanding what's going on from a social responsibility perspective is very important. It also allows for cost efficiencies and less audit fatigue. If you're proactive with your audits, you can understand what you need to do to ultimately lower your costs and not have to do the same audits over and over again. And really, if you've already done, a social audit and food safety audit, and you actually have a social responsibility program, all these things are coming down the pike. There's not going to be less, regulations and requests. There's going to be more. So the point is to really take a proactive approach, which will allow you to expand your business relationships, grow your business, but also with new customers. They're going to ask you for these things, and if you have them already, you prove that you're not a risk to their business, and they are more apt to work with you quicker and give you more business up front. So it's just good business practice. We all know that everyone's doing great work. It's about being able to promote it and prove it out in the marketplace. And that's why when Sandy was saying, should you do a 2 or a 4 pillar, we have a lot of companies and a lot of grocery retailers, ask for a 2 pillar. Some ask for 4 pillar, but opportunity. If you want to do kind of the minimum is the 2 pillar, that's no problem. But it's not that much more to do the 4 pillar, and you get a whole lot more information and a whole lot more value out of it. And it really shows that you are, taking a real proactive approach to your program. And then, SCS, as we said, we have, many years. We're experts in food and agriculture. We are able to give you incredible support throughout the whole process, holding your hand, having access to our experts like Cynthia and Sandy. We are a member of APSCA, which is the Association of Professional Social Compliance Auditors, which you need to have to do any SMETA audit. And then if you bundle it with your food safety or your other certifications, we're able to obviously give you a better price. So with that, let's see. Sandy, would you like to lead the questions here?
Yes, of course. So some of these common questions that are coming in are, what do I have to join SEDEX in order to get a SMETA audit? How is that related? And that is a very good question. The SEDEX system is that online platform that is required in order to conduct a SMETA audit. In order for us to obtain the audit report for your site, we need to be able to have your site registered in SEDEX in order to be able to download that documentation. So yes, you do need to be a SEDEX member in order to be able to have a SMETA audit. And the SEDEX online and the website is very easy to navigate. You can register as the type of supplier member, and there will be an additional membership fee there as well, which is not related to our audit process. And I have another question too, which I wanted to have Cynthia answer is, once the audit is complete and non-compliances are all closed out, do we get a certificate?
Yes,
Cynthia.
thank you, Sandy.
Mhm.
Well, it's important to keep in mind that SMETA is not a certification, and SMETA audit is not a certification. So SMETA does not provide a certificate after the non-compliances were closed. The only evidence we have is the platform. If you find the status and platform in green, that means that your non-compliance has been closed and you can move forward with the next steps.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Oren, there's a sales question here in terms of what is an estimated range, how much of what a SMETA audit costs here in the US?
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, it's it kind of depends if it's a 2 or a 4 pillar, but really, and where it's located. Obviously, there's travel costs and expenses, but on a not to exceed level, a 2 pillar. It also has to do with the number of workers. So the threshold, if you have under 100 workers, it's either a day or a day and a half. If you have between 100 and 500 workers, which I don't know, most companies have either under 100 or under 500. If it's between 100 and 500, it's 2 to 2.5 days, depending on if you do a 2 pillar or a 4 pillar audit. And figure, the costs are somewhere between, 3,500 USD to 5,500 per audit, plus travel and expenses. So figure maybe 4,000 to 6,000 all in, depending on the size of your facility and where you're located. Happy to talk specific cases. You can reach out to me directly.
Thank you, Oren. And on my side, it looks like we have covered the main topics of the questions that have been sent our way. But if there are any other questions that anyone would like to add, this is the time. If you want to add that to that question section, and we're happy.
I'm seeing a bunch more. Like do you audit in the UK? Unfortunately, we don't right now audit in the UK, and just US, Canada, and Latin America for the time being. How much time do we need to make for an audit with SMETA? I think it depends. I mean, I think for us, once you kind of place an order with us, it takes around 4 to 6 weeks to schedule the audit from when we receive our signed work order. So, give it a couple months. I mean, we don't like last minute audits, but like we're in April now, so we're scheduling for June and July. So if you wanted one this summer, now is a good time to reach out. Another question, do we do audits in India? No, we do not. Just US, Canada, and Latin America for the time being. Mark, I see your question on challenges of fire safety in China. That's a can of worms type of question. I very much appreciate it. We don't do audits in China, and I think that's a nuanced question that since we're not in that market every day, I don't really think we're in a position to offer you any tips. I think that's one where we can maybe, you know, some of the other auditing firms that do lots of audits in China might be a little more helpful, because I don't think you can do that. The other one, Sergio, how's our approach with COVID auditing? So one of the things is that we, you know, we're very COVID safe. All of our auditors are, you know, vaccinated. They all wear masks. We, our CEO is very adamant, not just about, you know, any mask, but, you know, absolute minimum N95. He actually got all of our auditors N100 masks, just to make sure. You know, we, you know, we've been doing auditing through COVID, and we're, you know, we can work with you, but unfortunately, SMETA audits require that you have an on-site audit. So it's not, you're not going to get a SMETA audit remotely. So we cannot, you know, it's not an actual SMETA audit. So I'm happy to answer other questions, Sergio, if you have. How often do you need to recertify? Is it yearly? That depends on your customer, Aaron. It, you know, it obviously it's not a certification. It's just an audit, and some companies give you a number of years. Some want it every year. So that really is something that is depending on your customer and who's requesting it from you. A lot of companies, if you know you're up in Canada, they might you know, give you a couple of years. Others want you to do it annually.
Oren, I like to add a response for an important question that I can see regarding zero tolerance non-compliances.
Yes.
It's a really good question. Well, SMETA doesn't have a rating like zero tolerance. The rating is critical findings, critical non-compliances, and you you can know what is a critical non-compliance in the measurement criteria document. In all the documentation that Sandy mentioned previously, you can find the scope and you can identify what is a critical issue. And when a really critical issue is found by our auditor during the audit, there is a special document called supplementary report that is completed by the auditor, and we have to upload directly in SEDEX. And in SEDEX, you will find like a flag in the audit, so you can know that there is a supplementary report, and this is sorry, in order to guarantee the confidentiality of the workers and maybe the managers, we need to follow the SMETA procedure.
Thank you, Cynthia. Let me just answer a couple more. Jerry, we do virtual audits. No, we don't, because they don't count. And even if we did one, you would still have to do a regular one. So it's, you know, being completely honest, kind of a waste of time and money, because they don't really count, and you just have to pay for one when they can do on site anyway. So we would just say when it's safe, we'll do one on site. Randolph, good to see you. Can I do the 2-pillar even though my customers require a 4-pillar? No, if they require a 4-pillar, you have to do a 4-pillar, unfortunately. But I think you're going to get a lot more value out of it. It is a little bit, you know, more of a heavy lift, but yeah, I think, you know, you do have to do a 4-pillar. Sandy, do you want to take this one? What are the training requirements for SMETA auditors?
Yes, of course, Oren. So in order to be a SMETA auditor, we require auditors to be APSCA approved. APSCA is an international association of social auditors, and they need to meet a certain audit day requirement, and on top of that also take a series of exams in order to be considered APSCA certified, and that level is when you are now able to audit in the SMETA program. And I'm happy to share that information individually with you, Terry, if you're interested or pursuing to be a SMETA auditor.
Yeah, it's a very high bar, and it's I don't want to compare it to, I mean, the comparison is like being a CPA, or it is minimum 100 audits under your belt, and have been doing it for years and passing written exams, and it's a big deal. So if you're a SMETA auditor, you have achieved very high level.
And I do want to add that majority of our auditors are APSCA certified. There is APSCA registered status, which identifies that auditors are still in the examination process, but they can already audit. And then you have your APSCA certified, which have passed all of the exams and have a certificate from APSCA confirming that they're APSCA certified. And at this moment, more than half of our auditors in the SMETA program are APSCA certified.
Right. Do you want to take, there's one towards the bottom from Randolph, so they have issues like up in the fruit harvest, like in Washington State, right, where they're doing cherry production, and they're supposed to have one day off of work a week, but there's a certain amount of time for these cherries to be harvested. And if the employees sign a voluntary letter that say they are happy to work 7 days a week, how can we deal with those things? Are there any ways to deal with that for, I assume you're talking about US production, Randolph? Does one of you want to take that?
I'll actually pass that on to Cynthia, who is the technical manager, and I'm sure has reviewed some situations like this with other sites before. But I do want to first add that in terms of the working hours and those requirements, those are specifically stated in the ETI base code as well as the SMETA guidance documentation, and that is what the auditor is evaluating. But Cynthia, if you want to add something else, that would be great.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. Sorry, Oren, just to be clarified, this means, or is in order to know more about the working hours as SMETA requirements, to be clear on?
What the person is asking, Cynthia, is what does the site do if the cherry production, their specific cherry production doesn't allow them to meet the requirements that are stated in the SMETA program? For example, and he's saying here that the total hours and 1 day off per week is a challenge for their company. So how would they address that?
Yes, it is a really common issue in several sites. In this case, we need to be in full compliance with SMETA requirements. I mean, there is not an exception. I know it's allowed by the local regulations. However, it's an SMETA requirement. So my answer is we need to be in full compliance with the specific requirement, no more than 60 hours per week, including overtime.
Even if the workers sign a voluntary disclosure saying it's okay if they work longer hours. I think what you're saying is that no matter what they sign, they still have to, that doesn't count, is what we're saying.
Yes, you're right, Oren.
Yeah.
Even though we need to be in full compliance.
There's one from Mariana up here. When it comes to addressing corrective actions within the working hours section, can applicable corrective actions be addressed by having documentation in place to justify the need to incur overtime hours? I guess that's similar to what we just said, Mariana, in that because the ETA base code is 60 hours, if you work more, it is going to be a violation. But what I will say is that during peak production, a lot of times the reality is that you have to have that overtime work. And if the workers are okay with it, yes, it will be a violation, but oftentimes the customer will, accept it. But obviously you have here achieving a SMETA certification. Because there is no achieving a SMETA certification, you have violations, you correct them. If you had a violation, your customer might say, hey, you need to fix these working hours. And you might say, hey, well, we have production for 2 more weeks, and then the working hours will go down, and that might be okay for them. So it's kind of a case by case basis based on the risk tolerance of your customer, right? So we can't, answer, and because there's no pass and fail to a SMETA audit, it's hard to answer that question. I know, and then now Roxy has a great question. What if a state does not have the maximum 60 hours? And this is where, there's a lot of nuances, right? Because this is the ETI base code. And so if the customers, you're working with Target or Walmart, and they're, going by the letter of the ETI base code law, even though the state doesn't. I mean, in the US, there isn't really an overtime laws of working hours. As long as you pay them minimum wage and the overtime rate, they can work as much as they want. So that would be kind of thing where, it might be a violation according to ETI base code. But again, the circumstances are that you're in peak season and you have to pick the fruit, or you have to get them packed. You only have a few weeks to do it, or a few months. And so most customers, most grocery retailers understand that nuance and won't hold up doing business with you. That's the risk, right? Is they're going to take away doing business with you. But most do not. And then you just have to have a plan. Well, what are you going to do? And you say, well, when, either hire more people so they don't have to work egregious hours, or, agree that after a certain amount of time, after this month of production, you're going to go back to being in compliance, and hopefully that's okay with them. So it's a tough question that needs to have the conversation with your.
Yeah, and also to complementary, Oren, that's the reason why you need to work in identifying your root causes to implement a corrective action plan. As Oren mentioned, it maybe hire more people, more workers are needed, because even the local regulations allow more working hours.
Yep.
We need to follow the stricter criteria. This is one of the goals to conduct an SMETA audit. So I recommend you to work in identifying the root cause.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm conscious of the time, everybody. I see your question, Ron. Why don't you email me, Ron, that question, and I'll make sure you get an answer. And obviously you have my info, everybody. Please feel free to reach out. We're here to help and support you. But on behalf of my colleagues Sandy and Cynthia, thank you so very much for joining us today. We really appreciate you all as our clients and colleagues, and appreciate your business, and we look forward to continuing our support. So with that, have a wonderful afternoon, and thanks again. Take care, everybody.